Good morning. Welcome to Monday Morning Coffee and Chat with Hallee Bridgeman. I'm so happy you could join me. I have my cup of coffee, so I hope you have a cup of coffee or tea and you have a few minutes while we chat. So I have two live things happening, and so my view is going to look a little different. And so we're on the last Monday of April, and April is Autism Awareness Month, and so I have my autism cup, and so we're going to chat about autism today. So for those of you who know me, know that I have a son who is 12, Scott, and Scott has autism. He has what would have been in the past classically labeled as Asperger's syndrome because he's super high functioning. But they don't use those terms anymore. It's medically and insurance wise, it's either autism with speech or autism without speech. And so his classification is autism without speech, or I'm sorry, autism with speech. But he is like textbook Asperger's. And it was a challenge getting him a diagnosis, because he is so high functioning. And so when they originally diagnosed him, what they called it was pervasive development disorder, not otherwise specified. And what that did is kind of put a placeholder in that said there are issues, we know that there are issues, but we don't know if they're going to developmentally go away. And then at 9 years old, that stops. And at 9, everything was reassessed, and he got like the actual autism diagnosis, which was something that we always knew he had. It just was, we were just waiting for therapists and medical personnel to confirm it. So this week I've been super like immersed busy, and I have been finishing a big project, and I have trying to get caught up with our publishing company's accounting, and we have an annual big giant party around this time of year every year, and Saturday was our day of our party, and so kind of everything had to kind of stop for me on Thursday morning as I went through everything to get the party ready, and then the party was Saturday, and then so yesterday morning I was just exhausted, and I opened up my social media, and I hadn't really been on social media much, just a little bit here and there. And so all of these autism support things I'm in kind of flooded my my newsfeed, because a lot of them I get notifications for, and I hadn't been online. So there was like issue after issue after issue that I ended up saying to Greg, my husband, I don't know what makes Scott different, if it's the way that we parent or the way that he is with his personality, or if it's a combination of the two, but I feel like I just want to take these parents into our home and say, let me help you, because it isn't so bad. It can be not so bad, because this was our experience. And then there was something else that I saw this morning that said, it was one of those Mighty articles, which is, Mighty is like all of these special needs articles that they compile into one thing. And I had an article about Scott one time go viral. And so when Mighty picked it up is when it really went viral. It ended up being picked up by Yahoo, and I did a bunch of interviews on like radio stations all over the country and stuff about it. And so the Mighty was one of the things that helped that post go so viral. And so there was an article on Mighty this morning that was like, I carry my 5-year-old, and we get a lot of weird stares, but he's someone who escapes, he flees. And so carrying him, keeps him secure in it. And it made me think of my son Scott was one of the ones that would escape. And he would, and it wasn't, there was no maliciousness. He wasn't trying to get away from me. He just didn't comprehend on any level, even at the age of 5, that walking away from me would put him in any kind of danger, or that he could get lost, or and then not be able to explain his way back home. And so I kept like deadbolts locked on our doors at all times. I didn't really go anywhere. My husband, for a good portion of Scott's toddlerhood and early years, so he was 6 when he came home, was in Afghanistan. And so I was pretty much alone, and I had a younger son. And so it was, I had 2 children and then an older child, Kaylee, and it was just easier not to leave. It was easier to stay home inside deadbolt, so that if the deadbolt was bolted, I knew that he was in the house somewhere. And I didn't have to like have a massive panic. If I couldn't find him, I would just have to go seek him out. So, but it was this art. So I remember like wearing Jeb, my youngest son, on my back, and then carrying Scott everywhere we went, because if I was holding him in my arms, he couldn't get away from me. Or I would wear Scott on my back and have Jeb in a stroller. So whichever one, whatever was conducive to the environment we were in, I was always holding Scott because he was too big for the stroller, because putting him down or letting him be free meant at any second he could disappear. He was in a mall in Chicago, and I had gone out to the car to get Jeb's diaper bag and left him with my sister-in-law, who had a neurotypical child the same age as Scott, and she was just in, a store with the kids, and one second Scott was there and the next second he was gone in a mall in a major city like Chicago. And just, it could be anything. And so I remember, reading that article made me think of all the times that I carried him, and I never cared that someone was staring at me. This was how I keep my son safe, and how I can how I can function and not be scared that he's going to disappear on me. And so, they have this whole thing where they say if you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. And because they're so different and they're so not ever the same. But the thing is that there are so many things that make them the same. When we fill out all these forms to get his diagnosis and for all of his reassessments and stuff, there's all these questions like, does he walk on his toes? Does he have issues with food, touching? Does he make eye contact? Does he make friends easily? And as you go through all of these questions, it occurs to you how similar all of these children are, because I used to think some things were just Scott. Like, my kid is weird and quirky, and why is he doing this thing? And then I get this assessment and it's a question on a test, and I'm like, oh, if this is a question, then there's parents all over the place that deal with this. And so now let me look at it from this perspective. This is autism. This is not quirkiness on a kid. This is not strange parenting. This is, okay, now I can handle this thing about him because I know that it's part of his spectrum. So I wasn't sure how to talk about this morning, but what I want to say is, it's so common now in our society. Autism diagnoses are growing. Is it because of toxins in our system? Is it because of the types of food that people consume? Is it because of medical testing? Is it because of what? I have no idea. None of us know. However, more and more and more people are experiencing autism or someone autistic in their lives than ever before. And it's not easy to accept the diagnosis. I remember watching, there was a TV show called Parenthood, and Scott had just gotten diagnosed, and I was watching like the first couple episodes of it, and there's a son on that show that was a little bit older than Scott, and the parents were in the process of getting the diagnosis, and when the dad, when they actually got the words, "This is what's wrong with your son," they had like this emotional scene in the show, and I was sobbing watching it, because I'm like, they exactly know exactly how I feel. Like I've held all this in because it didn't make sense to me that I felt this way, but they're like revealing exactly how I feel, and it's almost as if it's okay to feel this way. But it's not, it's you're not alone. And that's kind of what I wanted to come on here and say, is that if this is something that you're struggling with, if this is something that bogs you down in your day-to-day, and you're exhausted as a caregiver, and you have to carry your 5-year-old because if you don't, he might disappear, or you have to deadbolt your doors so that they don't run away, or you have to separate their food so that they'll eat it properly, or, you know, if you haven't had a full night's sleep since they were born and they're 7 years old, you're not alone. You're not alone. There are hundreds of thousands of other parents in the country that are going through exactly the same thing. And it gets better as they get older. Because Scott will turn 13 this year, and the changes that we've seen in him in just the last 2 years, it's like there are things that I never ever comprehended that he would ever be able to do. At our party this weekend, there was a mom of an autistic son who was there with us, and she was saying that she was a little apprehensive because next year he'll be changing classes in school. And so Scott was in 6th grade this year, and I went into 6th grade with this mindset that he'll never make it. He'll never be able to change classes. He'll never be able to maneuver his way through hallways. He'll never be able to keep track of his schedule. And the reason I thought this was because Scott can't do 3 steps. If you say, go to your room, get your shoes, and put them on, he will go to his room and he will get his shoes, and at that point he stops because he doesn't remember what the 3rd step was. And he has a great memory. He can recite, you know, verbatim shows that he's watched, but he's not being given instruction in the shows. And so 3 steps, 2 is his step. And so you have to say, either write it down, here's a list of the things that you need to do, or give them to him 2, and then he's finished those 2, what's next? Here's 2 more, finish those 2, what's next? And so that was one of the things that we've had to figure out how to help him with life skills, is do everything in 2 steps or write it down. And so, you know, I was like, he'll never ever be able to change classes. Zach, he could tell you exactly what class he's supposed to be in what order, at what time. His issue comes when that changes. Like if there's an assembly or a field trip or something, he's like, oh, what do I do now? Because I don't know where to go. And then he came to us, and he has, like, we've had to say to him for his entire childhood, take a bath, brush your teeth, wash your face, wash your hands. The self-care is what it's called. And so I thought, how is he's almost 13 years old, and I have to tell him to take a bath, or he would wear the same pajamas 24 hours a day and never bathe his body. And so I would, you know, Greg and I were talking, what do we do next? How do we handle this? And we were trying to figure out what would be best. Do we make a chart? And he came to us and said, I have a phone. He got a phone for Christmas. I have a phone now, and it has calendar on it. And I would like to set up reminders for bathing, for brushing my teeth, for taking my medicine, for going to bed. Can you help me? Can you help me by not reminding me anymore? Let me be in charge of that. And we were like, okay, that's wonderful. Yes, of course, set your alarms. And so now, instead of saying to him, tomorrow you need to, now I say, set your alarm because you need to have an alarm for this for tomorrow. And he's a master at it. And he's controlling his own self-care, and he's controlling his own schedule. And it's, you know, 2 years ago, I would have thought there's no way he can do that. And so if you need encouragement, I want to encourage you by saying, you got this, and your kids got this, and you're not alone. And if you ever need specific, how do I handle this situation? Ask me, ask any other parent, ask support groups, ask your therapist, ask your doctor, because the chances are good that you think it's this weird little thing about your kid only, and it's not. It's everyone. It's everyone's kid with high functioning autism, who has that specific issue. So it's, yes, if you've met one autistic kid, you've met one autistic kid, but they're so much similar all over across the board that it's crazy to me how it's so easy to see now. So I hope you all have a great rest of your week as we end April into Autism Awareness Month. I have a book to finish. I'm going back to work, and I will see you next Monday. God bless you.